Captain Jake Morrison stared at the massive holographic display floating in the middle of the ship's command center. The image showed a dark region of space that stretched across 12 light-years, swirling with strange energy patterns that made his eyes hurt to look at directly. Every spacefaring race in the galaxy had given this place the same name in their own languages, but humans simply called it the Dead Zone. 17 fleets have gone in there over the past 100 years, Admiral Lisa Carter said as she walked around the display. Her voice was steady, but Jake could hear the concern underneath. Not one ship has ever come back out. Jake nodded slowly as he studied the data scrolling past on smaller screens around the room. The numbers told a grim story. The Zephyrian Empire had sent their most powerful dreadnought squadron into the anomaly 50 years ago. These were ships the size of small cities, armed with weapons that could crack planets in half. They had vanished without sending even a single distress signal. The crystalline beings called the Vorthak Collective had tried a different approach 20 years later. They sent in 300 smaller ships, all connected by their hive mind network. The idea was that even if some ships were destroyed, the others could learn from their fate and adapt. But the entire fleet had simply stopped transmitting all at once, as if someone had thrown a switch. "What about the Keldari expedition?" Jake asked, though he already knew the answer would not be good. Dr. Paul Adams, the ship's lead scientist, pulled up another set of data. The Keldari are masters of dimensional technology. They can fold space and travel between realities. They sent their most advanced exploration vessels equipped with emergency dimensional jump systems. The ships were designed to automatically return home if they detected any threat. But they never came back either, Jake finished. Correct. Whatever is in that zone, it does not just destroy ships. It prevents them from escaping in ways we do not understand. Jake looked around at his crew. The U.S. Defiant was humanity's newest stealth frigate, packed with the most advanced technology Earth could produce. But compared to the ships that had already been lost in the Dead Zone, it was tiny. While the Zephyrian dreadnoughts carried crews of 50,000, the Defiant had only 47 humans aboard. "So why are we different?" asked Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks from her position at the tactical station. "What makes anyone think we can succeed where everyone else failed?" Admiral Carter touched a control and the display changed to show energy readings from the Dead Zone. "Because we found something the others missed. Dr. Adams, show them what your sensors detected." The scientist stepped forward and highlighted specific patterns in the energy readings. Every other species used standard gravitational and electromagnetic sensors to study the anomaly. But our quantum detection systems picked up something else. "Look at these fluctuation patterns." Jake studied the data carefully. At first glance, the energy readings looked completely random, like static on an old radio. But as he watched longer, he began to see it. There was a rhythm hidden in the chaos, a pattern that repeated every few minutes. "It is not natural," Dr. Adams continued. "Natural phenomena do not create patterns like this. This suggests intelligence behind the anomaly. Something is controlling it, or someone." Amy added grimly. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez had been quiet during the briefing, but now he spoke up. "If there is something intelligent in there, why has it not come out? Why stay hidden in that zone? Maybe it cannot leave," suggested Steve Walsh, the ship's navigator. "Maybe whatever power it has only works inside that region of space." Admiral Carter nodded. "That is our best theory. But theories will not help us if we are wrong. The question is, are you willing to take this mission knowing that every other attempt has failed?" Jake looked at each of his crew members. These were people he had served with for 3 years. They had faced pirates in the outer colonies, survived a Zephyrian attack on the trade routes, and helped evacuate civilians from a collapsing space station. But this was different. This was flying straight into what every species in the galaxy considered certain death. "What do we know about the ships that went missing?" he asked. Dr. Adams called up more data. The Zephyrian Empire sent their flagship, the Eternal Glory. It was over 10 kilometers long and carried enough firepower to level a continent. The Vorthak sent fast attack ships with quantum shields that could phase in and out of normal space. The Keldari vessels could literally exist in multiple dimensions at once. "All of them had better technology than us," Amy observed. "Much better," Dr. Adams agreed. "The Zephyrian weapons are centuries ahead of ours. Vorthak shield technology is something we barely understand, and Keldari dimensional science is like magic to us." Jake walked over to the viewport and looked out at the stars. Humanity had only been traveling between the stars for 200 years. Most of the other species had been doing it for thousands of years. In terms of technology, humans were like children compared to the ancient civilizations that ruled the galaxy. But we have something they do not, he said finally. What is that, sir? Tony asked. We are too stupid to know when something is impossible. The comment drew some nervous laughter from the crew, but Jake was serious. Human history was full of people who had succeeded by refusing to accept that something could not be done. When faced with superior enemies, humans had always found ways to adapt and overcome. The other species sent their best ships with their most advanced technology. Jake continued. Maybe that was the problem. Maybe whatever is in that zone is specifically designed to counter advanced technology. You think we should go in there with inferior equipment? Amy asked. I think we should go in there as humans, Jake replied. Every other species has tried to solve this problem by throwing their greatest strengths at it. Maybe the solution is to approach it differently. Admiral Carter smiled slightly. That is exactly what Command is hoping. The Defiant may not be the most powerful ship in the fleet, but it has the most adaptable crew. If anyone can find a way through that zone, it will be humans. Dr. Adams was already running calculations. We can modify our sensors to look for things the other species might have missed. Their technology is so advanced that they might overlook simple solutions. How long until we reach the dead zone? Jake asked. 36 hours at maximum speed, Steve answered. Then we have 36 hours to come up with a plan that no one else has thought of in 100 years. Jake turned back to his crew. I will not lie to you. We are probably flying to our deaths, but if we do not try, no one will ever know what happened to those missing fleets, and whatever is in that zone will keep claiming ships until someone finds a way to stop it. The crew exchanged glances, but Jake could see the determination in their eyes. This was what humans did best. When faced with impossible odds, they found a way to make the impossible merely difficult. All right then, Jake said. Let's go see what scared everyone else away. The UES Defiant crossed into the dead zone at exactly 1400 hours ship time, and immediately everything went wrong. Jake Morrison felt his stomach lurch as the artificial gravity fluctuated wildly, making him grab onto his command chair to keep from falling. Around the bridge, warning lights flashed red and yellow as system after system began reporting errors. What is our status? Jake called out over the noise of alarms. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez was hunched over his console, his fingers flying across the controls. Main engines are fluctuating between 50 and 120% power. I cannot get them to stabilize. The quantum field generators are fighting something that keeps trying to rewrite their basic programming. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks looked up from her tactical station with worry in her eyes. Weapon systems are offline. The targeting computers keep calculating impossible firing solutions, like they think we are shooting at targets that exist in 17 different places at once. Dr. Paul Adams was staring at his science readings with complete confusion. The laws of physics are not working correctly in here. I am reading temperatures that range from absolute zero to the center of a star, sometimes in the same location. Space itself seems to be infected with something. Jake tried to access the ship's main computer, but the screen kept displaying error messages in languages that did not exist. Charlie, respond, he called to the ship's artificial intelligence. The AI's voice came back distorted and strange. Captain Morrison, I am experiencing cascading logical errors. My processing cores are being forced to solve mathematical problems that have no solutions. I am trying to maintain basic ship functions, but whatever field surrounds us is actively corrupting my data structures. Navigator Steve Walsh was manually plotting their course using backup systems. Sir, our position keeps changing even though we are not moving. According to the sensors, we are somehow traveling in 6 different directions at the same time. Can you get us back to normal space? Jake asked. I am trying, but the boundary we crossed seems to have moved. Or maybe we moved. Or maybe both. Nothing makes sense in here. The ship shuddered as they pushed deeper into the anomaly. Through the main viewport, Jake could see space itself looked wrong. Stars appeared to bend and twist, creating patterns that hurt to look at directly. Colors that had no names shifted and moved through the darkness like living things. Captain, Dr. Adams called out urgently. I am detecting metallic structures ahead. Large ones. On screen, Jake ordered. The main display flickered and stabilized, showing something that made the entire bridge crew fall silent. Floating in the twisted space ahead of them was a massive ship, easily 3 times the size of the Defiant, but it was not moving. It hung in space like a dead thing, no lights, no energy signatures, nothing to indicate life aboard. Is that Zephyrian? Amy asked quietly. Dr. Adams ran his sensors over the vessel. Yes, that is the design. But look beyond it. Jake felt his breath catch in his throat as more shapes appeared on the screen. Ships of every size and design floated motionless in the void around them. He could see the crystalline hulls of Vorthak vessels, their surfaces dark and lifeless. Further away, the impossible curves of Keldari dimensional ships twisted through space like frozen sculptures. They are all here, Steve whispered. Every missing fleet from the past 100 years. But they are not destroyed, Tony observed, studying the engineering readouts. The hulls are intact. There is no sign of weapons damage or structural failure. Jake stood up and walked closer to the main screen. Then what happened to the crews? Dr. Adams was running every scan he could think of. I am not detecting any life signs, but that might be because our sensors are not working properly in here. Wait, I am picking up something strange. The ships are not just floating randomly. They are arranged in a pattern. The display zoomed out to show a wider view of the area. Jake could see that Dr. Adams was right. The dead ships were not scattered randomly through space. They were positioned in careful rows and columns like exhibits in a museum. Someone collected them, Amy said with growing horror. Someone or something gathered all these ships and arranged them like trophies. But why keep them intact? Jake wondered. If you wanted to destroy them, why not just blow them up? Maybe destroying them was not the goal, Dr. Adams suggested. Maybe whoever did this wanted to preserve them for some reason. The ship's communication system suddenly crackled to life with broken transmissions. Through the static, Jake could hear voices speaking in different alien languages. Most of the words were unclear, but the tone was universal. Fear and desperation. Those are coming from the dead ships, Steve reported. Somehow their communication systems are still partially active. Can you clean up the signals? Jake asked. Tony worked on the communications array for several minutes before getting a clearer signal. The voice that came through was speaking in broken human English, though the speaker was clearly not human. Warning to any ships receiving this transmission, the alien voice said. Do not approach the center of this zone. We are the survivors of the Keldari exploration fleet. Our ships have been trapped here for 37 years. The entity that controls this space does not destroy vessels. It preserves them. It studies them. It learns from them. Another voice joined in. This one speaking the trade language used by most spacefaring species. This is Commander Vex of the Zephyrian Imperial Navy. Our weapons are useless against the intelligence that rules here. It feeds on advanced technology. The more sophisticated our systems, the easier it is for the entity to control them. A third voice, buzzing with the harmonic tones of the Vorthak Collective, added its warning. The collector grows stronger with each fleet it captures. It has learned to counter every defensive system, every weapon, every escape method we possess. We have become part of its collection, preserved at the moment of our defeat. Jake looked around at his crew. They were all listening to the desperate messages from the trapped survivors with growing understanding and fear. How many are still alive out there? Amy asked quietly. Dr. Adams was monitoring the communication signals. I am detecting active transmissions from at least 40 different ships across 17 different species. But the signals are weak and getting weaker over time. They are dying slowly, Jake realized. Whatever is keeping those ships preserved is also keeping the crews alive, but just barely. Tony checked the engineering displays with new worry. Captain, our own systems are starting to show the same corruption patterns. If we stay here much longer, we might end up like them. Then we need to figure out what we are dealing with and fast, Jake said. Dr. Adams, can you determine where these signals are strongest? Working on it now. The pattern suggests that whatever is controlling this zone is located toward the center of the anomaly. Approximately 6 million kilometers from our current position. That is where the collector is, Jake said grimly. Whatever intelligence is responsible for all this, it is waiting for us at the heart of the dead zone. The ship shuddered again as more systems began to fail. Jake knew they were running out of time, but now they had something the other fleets had not possessed, warning from those who came before them. The UES Defiant pushed deeper into the dead zone, passing rows of silent ships from civilizations across the galaxy. Jake Morrison watched the main screen as they approached the center of the anomaly, where something waited that had been collecting fleets for over 1,000 years. The thing they were about to face had never been seen by any species and lived to tell about it. "Captain, you need to see this," Dr. Paul Adams called out from his science station. His voice was tight with fear and wonder. The main display shifted to show what their sensors were detecting ahead. At first, Jake could not understand what he was looking at. The object was massive, easily the size of a small moon, but its shape made no sense. Parts of it looked like a machine built from metal and crystal, while other sections seemed to be made of living tissue that pulsed with its own light. Some areas appeared to exist in normal space, while others seemed to bend and twist through dimensions that human minds were not meant to comprehend. "What are we looking at?" Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks asked quietly. "I am not sure our language has words for it," Dr. Adams replied. "The entity appears to be part technology, part biological organism, and part pure energy. It exists in at least 7 dimensions simultaneously, which is why our sensors are having trouble getting consistent readings." Chief Engineer Tony Martinez was studying the power readings from their instruments. "Whatever it is drawing energy from the fabric of space itself. The amount of power it controls is beyond anything I have ever seen." Navigator Steve Walsh looked up from his position with concern. "Sir, the entity appears to be aware of us. It is generating some kind of scanning beam that is examining our ship." Jake felt a strange sensation, as if invisible fingers were probing his mind. Around the bridge, his crew members were all showing signs of the same experience. Their eyes grew distant and unfocused, as though they were seeing things that were not there. "It is inside our heads," Amy said, shaking herself back to awareness. "The thing is reading our thoughts, our memories, learning everything about us. Charlie, report status." Jake called to the ship's artificial intelligence. The AI's response came back strangely distorted. "Captain, I am being subjected to a form of analysis I cannot resist. The entity is examining my programming, my databases, my logical structures. It appears to be cataloging human technology and knowledge through my systems." Dr. Adams was monitoring the scanning process with growing alarm. "This is how it works. The collector does not just capture ships, it studies them completely. It learns every detail about the species, their technology, their capabilities, their weaknesses. Through the communication system, more desperate messages were coming from the trapped alien crews." Jake could now understand that these were not random distress calls, but warnings specifically directed at the human ship. "Human vessel. This is Science Leader Keth of the Vorthak Research Fleet," one voice transmitted. "The collector has been studying your species through your ship's computer. Now knows about human military tactics, your weapon systems, your ship designs. You must escape before it completes its analysis." Another transmission came from a Zephyrian commander. "The entity learns from every encounter. When we arrived, it used the knowledge gained from previous captures to counter our defenses instantly. Each species it collects makes it more dangerous to the next." Jake began to understand the horrible truth. The collector was not just gathering ships like trophies. It was building a library of knowledge about every spacefaring civilization in the galaxy. Every fleet it captured made it smarter and more capable of defeating the next one. "How long do we have before it finishes studying us?" Jake asked. Dr. Adams checked his instruments. "Based on the rate of data extraction I'm observing, perhaps 30 minutes before it has a complete understanding of human technology and capabilities." "Then what happens?" Tony asked. The answer came not from Dr. Adams but from another alien transmission. "Then it will demonstrate that knowledge by capturing your vessel, using your own tactics against you. It will preserve your ship and crew just as it has preserved all the others. You will become part of its collection, alive but trapped forever." Jake looked around at his crew. In 30 minutes they would join the thousands of other beings who had been collected over the centuries. But unlike the previous fleets, they had been warned about what they were facing. "Dr. Adams, what can you tell me about the collector's structure?" Jake asked. "It appears to be a hybrid entity that has been growing for millennia. Each time it captures a new fleet, it incorporates their technology into itself. The Zephyrian energy weapons are now part of its offensive systems. The Vorthak hive mind network has been integrated into its consciousness. The Kildari dimensional technology allows it to exist in multiple realities at once. So it gets stronger with every conquest," Amy observed. "Exactly. And now it is preparing to add human technology to its collection. Our stealth systems, our adaptive AI, our quantum sensors. All of it will become part of the collector's capabilities." Jake studied the readings from their instruments. The entity was enormous and impossibly powerful, but something about the situation was bothering him. If this thing is so advanced, why does it stay hidden in this region of space? Why not come out and conquer the galaxy directly? Maybe it cannot leave, Steve suggested. Maybe its power only works inside the dead zone. Dr. Adams was analyzing the energy patterns around the collector. That might be correct. The entity appears to require the specific conditions that exist in this anomaly to maintain its hybrid nature. Outside this zone, it might lose the ability to exist in multiple dimensions or process the vast amounts of energy it controls. So it has to wait for prey to come to it, Jake realized. That is why it allows some survivors to live long enough to send distress signals. The messages attract more fleets to investigate. A trap that has been working for over 1,000 years, Amy said grimly. Jake made a decision that went against every tactical manual ever written. Tony, I want you to begin shutting down our advanced systems. Sir? The engineer looked confused. The collector is learning about human technology by studying our ship. What if we do not give it anything to study? Dr. Adams understood immediately. You want to deliberately reduce our technological capabilities? Every other species came here with their best and most advanced ships. Maybe that was their mistake. Maybe the solution is to become less advanced, not more. The idea was insane by the standards of every spacefaring civilization. Technology was progress, and progress was survival. No species had ever succeeded by voluntarily making themselves more primitive. But humans had a different history than the other races. They had survived ice ages, wars, and disasters by adapting and making do with whatever they had. Sometimes the best tool for the job was not the most sophisticated one, but the simplest one that actually worked. Begin the shutdown, Jake ordered. We are going to try something that no other species has ever attempted. Captain Jake Morrison watched as his crew began the most desperate plan in human military history. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez was physically disconnecting quantum processors and replacing them with mechanical systems that belonged in a museum. The idea of voluntarily making their ship more primitive would have horrified any other species in the galaxy. Charlie, initiate Emergency Protocol 7, Jake commanded. The ship's artificial intelligence responded with what could only be described as electronic distress. Captain, Protocol 7 will shut down 90% of my processing power and return the ship to basic mechanical control. This action will reduce our capabilities to pre-space flight levels. Do it anyway, Jake ordered. The lights on the bridge dimmed as the AI began shutting down its advanced functions. Charlie's voice became simpler and more mechanical as his higher reasoning centers went offline. Protocol 7 initiated. Advanced systems shutting down. Warning. This ship will no longer be able to compete with modern military vessels. That is exactly what we want, Jake replied. Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks was watching her tactical displays go dark one by one. Sir, we are losing weapons targeting, shield harmonics, and defensive predictions. We will be fighting with manual controls and basic calculations. Good, Jake said, though he could hear the worry in his own voice. The collector has been studying our advanced systems for the past 20 minutes. If we remove those systems, maybe it will not know how to counter what we do next. Dr. Paul Adams was frantically recalibrating his scientific equipment. I am converting our quantum sensors to basic electromagnetic detection. We will lose most of our scanning range and accuracy, but the readings should be harder for the entity to interfere with. Navigator Steve Walsh was already plotting their course using stellar navigation techniques that had not been used for 200 years. I am switching to visual navigation and mechanical calculation. It is like trying to sail a ship by the stars instead of using GPS. Tony was working with a team of engineers to physically rewire the ship's control systems. They were pulling out circuit boards and replacing them with mechanical switches and analog controls. Captain, we are essentially turning our starship into a very expensive chemical rocket. Our ancestors would recognize most of these systems. Through the main viewport, Jake could see the collector watching their strange behavior. The massive entity was still scanning their ship, but its scanning beams were becoming erratic and unfocused. For the first time in perhaps centuries, it was encountering something it did not immediately understand. Status report from all stations, Jake called out. Engineering reports all advanced systems offline, Tony announced. We are running on basic life support, mechanical thrusters, and nuclear power generation. Our speed and maneuverability are reduced to about 30% of normal. Tactical systems are primitive but functional, Amy reported. We have manual targeting for our remaining weapons, but no computer assistance. I will have to calculate firing solutions by hand like gunners did centuries ago. Science Station is operating on basic sensors only, Dr. Adams added. I can detect large objects and energy sources, but detailed analysis is impossible. We are essentially flying blind compared to our previous capabilities. Navigation is completely manual, Steve confirmed. I am using star positions and dead reckoning to determine our location. Our positional accuracy is probably off by several thousand kilometers. Jake nodded grimly. By any measure, they had just made themselves helpless compared to the advanced fleets that had come before them. The Zephyrian dreadnoughts had possessed computing power that could simulate entire galaxies. The Vorthak ships could process millions of tactical scenarios simultaneously. The Keldari vessels could calculate dimensional jumps across multiple realities, and now the human ship was operating with technology that would have been advanced in the year 2100. Incoming transmission from the collector, Steve reported. The main screen activated, showing an image that made everyone on the bridge step back in shock. The collector had created a perfect holographic representation of Jake Morrison, down to every detail of his uniform and facial expression. But the eyes were wrong. They held an intelligence that was ancient and completely inhuman. I am the curator of civilizations, the false Jake said, in a voice that was exactly right, but felt completely wrong. For 37 centuries I have preserved the greatest achievements of spacefaring species. Your technology will join my collection, and your crew will be maintained in perfect condition to study human behavior and capabilities. Jake faced his own image on the screen. We do not want to join your collection. Your desires are irrelevant, the curator replied. I have analyzed human military doctrine, your weapon systems, your ship designs, your tactical preferences. I know how humans fight, how they think, how they react under pressure. You cannot surprise me or defeat me because I understand you completely. Do you? Jake asked quietly. For the first time, the curator seemed puzzled. Your recent actions do not match human behavioral patterns. Why would a species voluntarily reduce its technological capabilities? This makes no strategic sense according to human military philosophy. Dr. Adams was monitoring the collector's scanning attempts. Captain, the entity is having difficulty analyzing our current systems. Its scans are designed to understand advanced technology, not primitive mechanical systems. Amy checked her manual targeting systems. Sir, our basic weapons are so simple that the collector's defenses might not recognize them as threats. Its shields are calibrated to stop advanced energy weapons and quantum projectiles, not simple kinetic rounds. Jake smiled grimly. Every other species had attacked the collector with their most sophisticated technology, playing directly into its strengths. The entity had learned to counter advanced weapons, energy shields, dimensional manipulation, and hive mind tactics because those were the tools that advanced civilizations used. But humans had a different history. They had spent thousands of years fighting wars with simple weapons and basic tactics. They had learned to adapt when their sophisticated equipment failed, to improvise when their plans fell apart, to succeed with whatever tools they could find. The collector thinks it knows how humans fight because it studied our modern military technology, Jake realized. But it has never seen how humans fought before we had advanced technology. Tony was grinning as he connected the last of the manual control systems. Captain, we are now operating with the tactical flexibility of a World War II submarine and the stubbornness of people who refused to quit, even when they were completely outgunned. Then, let us show this ancient entity something it has never seen before, Jake said. Let us show it how humans fight when they have nothing left to lose and no advanced technology to rely on. The collector continued its scans, trying to understand why the human ship had voluntarily made itself primitive. It had studied every advanced civilization in the galaxy, but it had never encountered a species that would deliberately step backward in order to move forward. That would be its first mistake, but not its last. Captain Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UES Defiant as they approached the massive collector, with nothing but primitive weapons and mechanical controls. The ancient entity had spent centuries perfecting its defenses against the most advanced technology in the galaxy, but it had never faced humans fighting the way their ancestors had fought for thousands of years. Range to target 200 kilometers in closing, Navigator Steve Walsh called out, reading numbers from basic instruments instead of computer displays. Weapons ready, Lieutenant Commander Amy Brooks reported from her manual targeting station. She was calculating firing solutions with pencil and paper, using mathematics that naval gunners had mastered centuries before humanity reached the stars. Chief Engineer Tony Martinez checked his mechanical gauges. All systems showing green. We have full power to engines and basic life support. The nuclear warheads are armed and ready for manual deployment. Dr. Paul Adams was monitoring their primitive sensors. The collector is attempting to scan us, but its analysis beams cannot get consistent readings on our mechanical systems. It appears confused by our technological regression. Jake opened a communication channel to the preserved alien fleets floating around them. This is Captain Morrison of the human vessel Defiant. We are about to attempt something that has never been tried before. If we succeed in disrupting the collector's control systems, be ready to act. Responses came back in dozens of different languages, but the meaning was clear. After years or decades of imprisonment, the alien crews were desperate for any chance at freedom. The collector is moving, Amy reported. It is deploying the same energy weapons it took from the Zephyrian fleet. Jake watched as beams of pure energy that could destroy planets lanced out toward their ship. But Tony had been ready for this moment. Engaging evasive maneuvers, he announced as he manually adjusted their course using mechanical controls. The Defiant twisted and rolled through space in patterns that made no sense to advanced targeting computers. Where sophisticated ships would use predictable mathematical curves for evasion, the human vessel moved with the random chaos of a craft controlled by human instincts and reflexes. The collector's weapons, designed to predict and counter advanced evasion algorithms, missed their target by thousands of kilometers. It cannot track us, Amy said with surprise. The targeting systems it stole from other species are designed to fight advanced ships that move in calculated patterns. Our random manual flying is too unpredictable. Fire main weapons, Jake ordered. Amy pressed a mechanical button that launched a simple kinetic projectile at the collector. The round was nothing more than a chunk of dense metal accelerated to high speed, the kind of ammunition that had been obsolete for centuries. The collector's advanced shields, calibrated to stop energy weapons and quantum torpedoes, did not even activate. The primitive projectile punched through defenses that could stop planet-killing beams and struck the entity's outer hull. The impact was tiny compared to the collector's massive size, but the effect was immediate and dramatic. Systems across the entity began flickering and failing as it tried to process damage from a weapon type it had not encountered in over 1,000 years. Direct hit, Amy reported with satisfaction. The collector's shields were not designed to stop simple kinetic weapons. Dr. Adams was watching his readings with excitement. The entity is experiencing systemic failures. Its hybrid nature requires constant energy balance between its technological, biological, and dimensional components. Our primitive attack has disrupted that balance. The collector began deploying more advanced defenses, including the hive mind network technology it had absorbed from the Vorthak. But the distributed intelligence that made the Vorthak so effective against other species was useless against humans who were not connected to any network and made decisions based on individual judgment rather than collective analysis. Prepare the nuclear warheads, Jake ordered. We are going to target the energy conduits that maintain the preservation fields around the captured fleets. Tony began the manual arming sequence for their most primitive weapons. Nuclear warheads were crude and simple compared to the advanced weapons carried by other species, but they had one advantage. They were completely unpredictable in their effects and impossible to counter with sophisticated defenses. The collector is trying to establish a mental link with our crew, Dr. Adams warned. It is using the same psychic techniques that allowed it to control the Keldari dimensional ships. But the humans had an advantage that the other species lacked. Where the Keldari minds were ordered and logical, human thoughts were chaotic and emotional. Where other species thought in predictable patterns, humans relied on intuition, stubbornness, and the ability to make decisions that made no logical sense. Let it try, Jake said grimly. Human minds do not work the way it expects. The collector's psychic assault, designed to overwhelm ordered alien consciousness, crashed against human minds that were already full of contradictions, emotions, and irrational thoughts. Instead of taking control, the entity found itself confused by minds that could hold completely opposite ideas at the same time, and consider both of them equally valid. "Nuclear weapons deployed," Tony announced, as he manually launched their warheads at carefully calculated positions around the collector. The primitive nuclear explosions that followed were tiny compared to the energy levels the collector normally dealt with, but they struck at exactly the right locations. The energy conduits that maintained the preservation fields around thousands of captured ships began overloading and failing. "The preservation fields are collapsing," Dr. Adams reported with amazement. "Ships throughout the collection are coming back online." Jake opened communication channels to the awakening fleets. "All vessels, this is Captain Morrison. The collector's control systems are failing. Coordinate your attacks with us and we can destroy this thing." The response was immediate and overwhelming. Thousands of ships from dozens of different species, preserved at the moment of their defeat, suddenly found themselves free to act again. The collector, which had spent centuries studying each species individually, now faced them all at once in a coordinated assault. Zephyrian dreadnoughts opened fire with planet-killing weapons. Vorthak swarm ships attacked in perfectly coordinated patterns. Keldari vessels struck from multiple dimensions simultaneously. The collector, overwhelmed by the combined technology of an entire galaxy's worth of civilizations, began to collapse under the assault. "The entity is destabilizing," Dr. Adams reported. "Its hybrid structure cannot maintain cohesion under this level of coordinated attack." The massive collector, which had ruled the dead zone for centuries, began breaking apart as its component systems failed one after another. The dark energy fields that maintained the anomaly started dissipating, returning normal spacetime to the region. "All ships clear the area," Jake broadcast. "The collector is going critical." The final explosion lit up space like a new star as the ancient entity destroyed itself rather than face defeat. When the light faded, the dead zone was gone, replaced by normal space filled with thousands of liberated vessels. Jake looked around at his crew, all of whom were grinning with exhaustion and relief. They had succeeded not through superior technology or firepower, but by being willing to fight with primitive weapons and tactics that the collector had never learned to counter. "Status report," he called out. "All systems functional," Tony reported. "We can begin restoring our advanced technology now that the threat is over." "Navigation is clear," Steve added. "We have a straight path back to human space." Jake opened a final communication to Admiral Carter. "Mission accomplished. The dead zone is destroyed and the missing fleets are free. Turns out the best way to fight the future was to use the past." The liberated alien crews sent messages of gratitude in hundreds of languages, but they all carried the same meaning. Humanity had accomplished what no other species could manage, not through advanced technology, but through the simple human refusal to accept defeat.